One. Welcome to Beast TV. Tonight, Beast goes to the Navajo Res and talks to Brenda Harvey Harris about the hair-raising investigations that her and the Shadow Seekers do there. So get you a fresh dip and buckle up. Larry Porst II, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. What kind of week have you had?
Oh, it's been busy running around everywhere. It's been hot, but I think next week it's supposed to cool off, and it looks like it's going to be squatching weather pretty soon.
Yep, yep. I'm really excited about it as soon as this weather starts getting cold.
Me too.
Well, I'm really excited tonight that we have Miss Brenda Harris on with us. Why don't you introduce us to Brenda?
I think most people that are joining us here tonight know all about Brenda. Brenda's from New Mexico. She started a Bigfoot group years ago because of things that happened to her in her youth and different things that's happened along around the reservation in New Mexico. And her group's called the Shadow Seekers. You can look that up on YouTube to see some of the evidence and things. But Brenda, we're going to let you say hello to everybody. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Hello, everybody. This
Thanks.
is my first time being on live video, so it's different for me.
Well, we're so glad that you joined us tonight. I don't know. Me and Dan Ricky talk so much about you all the time. We keep up with what y'all are doing, and we just have such fond memories of whenever you invited us and Bear out there a few years back, and it's just a pleasure to be able to see you and have you on tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I would like to ask you, well, even as a young child, you realized that there was something strange and unusual that was going around your home. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, the age-wise, I don't really quite remember. Maybe I was maybe 8 or 9, somewhere around there. Um, we used to go out to my grandma's out in Pinon, Arizona, and it's like a 3-hour drive. And my mom and dad would load all us kids up into the truck, and we'd go on our way. Um, we would, take, like I said, take some time to get out there. But let me back this up here. Um, I was, we used to live in Farmington, New Mexico, and used to live on this road. It was Southside River Road. This is actually where some strange things started. Was there? I was probably probably about the same age, maybe around 7 or 8, about that time, something like that, maybe even 9 or something. Anyway, between those ages, I remember it was during the summertime. We had our mobile home. We were in a mobile home, and we had windows, and it was really hot, so we would leave our bedroom windows open. And we lived about, let's see, maybe half, no, about a good mile, I would say, from that mobile home to the river. The river was on the it would be what on the south side, I think it was of the road there. But anyway, we would go to bed, and then real late at night, I remember um, we would hear scratches along the side of our just below our bedroom window. We heard a long scratch like going from window to the other window, side window. So it's kind of like a long scratch along, around the mobile home there. Oh boy, we all got scared. We'd jump up and we'd run to our mom and dad's room. Hey, something's outside. It's scratching the window. And at the same time, we would smell this really bad. There was a really bad smell. At the time we didn't know what it was. We just got scared and we would run to our parents' room. And of course, dad would get up and check, but there was nothing. This happened several times, and we could never figure out what it was. But I remember one night, it came and did the same thing. And the next morning, we had forgotten our little small kitten that we left outside. So we started looking for our cat. And when we were looking around outside, we had this tree, kind of like where we parked our vehicles. My mom and dad parked their vehicle. And on the tree, on the stump of the tree, probably about maybe 4 feet up the tree, our cat was on that tree, and it was like just clawed, really, just like this, its nails
Right.
were like stuck into the tree, and it was dead.
Oh no.
And we're like, holy cow, what happened to our cat? It was dead. It's like she got scared. I mean, literally got scared to death.
Mm.
Oh.
And we're like, what the heck? We start kind of like, okay, whatever came at night is coming at night and scratching the side of our mobile home underneath our bedroom window. Then we get that smell, bad scent. Whatever that is what scared our cat, literally, like I said, to death. And I was like, holy cow. So, as the years went on, we would hear every now and then some weird steps. I remember hearing some weird footsteps, but and then never thought of it being what's running around now, which is a Bigfoot.
Right.
Well, and then later in my teen years, I remember. Now we'll go into where we would go to see my grandma's in Arizona. And it's like a 3-hour drive, and we'd all load up about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And my mom and dad would always listen to the Navajo Hour, and the lady would always say something, and it was always pertaining to the San Juan River or the Animas River. And she would say, "Don't be going down there at night. There's a maitzo's down there." I'm like, "What's a maitzo?" So I asked my mom and dad, "What is she talking about? What's down at the river?" And mom and dad would always say, "Oh, it's nothing. Just go to sleep." So I'm like, "And we'll wake you up when we get to grandma's." So I'm like, "Okay." So I didn't bother asking anymore. And the next time, the following week, we'd be on the road again. About same time we'd be leaving. And of course, those times that I would ask my mom and dad, what is she talking about? Because, like I said, each time it was always pertaining to the San Juan River or Animas River. And each time the names were different. The first one, like I said, was Maitso. And then the next one was there's a monster down at the river. Don't be going at the river. And each time I would ask my mom and dad, of course, they didn't know I was listening. And what is she talking about? She's saying there's a monster at the river. What is she talking about? Oh, it's nothing. Just go to sleep. So I'm like, okay. And then, weeks went by and we went again. And this time, um, she says the name. Don't go down to the Animas River. There's a Sasquatch down there at the river. Again, I would ask mom and dad, what is a Sasquatch? Each time, like I said, she would say a different name, and I'm sitting there and trying to figure out what is she talking about. First, she says there's a Maitso, and then there's a monster, and now she's saying a Sasquatch. In my mind, I'm like, what is a Sasquatch? What is she talking about? And each time I would ask my parents, they would say, "Oh, it's nothing. Just go to sleep." So I'm like, okay. And then in my teens, when there was a movie that came out, Legend of Boggy Creek. So I went and watched that movie, and at the beginning of the movie, the guy talks about what was people were seeing, and then the guy says a name. He says the name Sasquatch, and I remembered that name. I'm like, I remember that name. That lady on the Navajo Hour said there's a Sasquatch at the river. So I'm sitting there watching, the movie as it gets going. I'm like, okay, what is this Sasquatch that they're talking about? And then when they finally showed, this big, tall, hairy creature, I'm like, oh my God, that's what the lady was talking about all this time. We literally have a monster running around down at the river. I'm like, okay, that's what the lady's talking about on Navajo Hour, because she would always say, don't be going down at the river, San Juan River. There's a Sasquatch down there. Stay away from the river late at night. Don't be going down there. I'm like, okay, this is what she's talking about.
Right.
So I'm like, wow, ever since then, that's when I started taking an interest into the Bigfoot.
Brenda, did your parents believe in the Sasquatch at that point, or did they believe in just
Um,
trying to hide it from you, or not believe at
uh,
all?
Probably a little bit of both, because I remember at one time when we were going down to traveling on the road to my grandma's. I remember the area we were in Kirtland on the old Kirtland Highway Road. Um, and it was like, I mean, like now it's so different, but we were on the back roads in Kirtland. And I remember my mom really yells out, what was it? She says, yee, yeah, what was that? Kind of like another word for like, whoa, like, oh, kind of like scared, like yikes,
Uh huh.
what
Right.
was that ran? Did you see that ran across the road? And I jumped like, what was it? What was it? That's, oh, it's nothing. It was just a dog. Mom's like, I'm like, that was not a dog, but just my mom's reaction and the tone of her voice, that didn't tell me that was a dog. That was something else. She goes, that was running on two legs. I mean, I remember it ran in front. My mom said it ran in front of the truck across the road in front of us. And my dad kind of swerved a little bit. And then that's when I'm like, what was it? What was it? Oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. You just go to sleep. Yeah, I always got told that is go to sleep. It's nothing. I'm like, okay, but yeah, those are some of the things that happened when I was young. Of course, there was some other things, but my very, very first, literally almost face to face encounter was in the early 90s. It was in the summertime. My husband was working the graveyard shift, and he left the house about 10:30, and I had the our bedroom window open. Then, of course, we had our living room windows open. At the time, we lived in a double wide, so we had a porch, and as you're walking up to the porch, we had laid out some gravel. So I could hear, footsteps. If anybody's walking on the gravel, I could hear it. Well, after my husband left for work that night, probably about maybe 30, I'm going to say about 30 minutes to almost 45 minutes goes by. Kids are all laughing and we're all just kind of having a good time. Just, kids had their cousins over, and I had my youngest brother there with me at the time. And we are just sitting there, and all of a sudden, I could hear the dogs um, like all of a sudden start whimpering and crying. And pretty soon I start hearing heavy like footsteps on the gravel walking up onto the porch. When you have a porch, or even a screen door, as time goes by, they start squeaking, right?
Right.
So I could hear this thing literally walking up on the stairs. And what caught my attention the most was the dogs. We had couple dogs, and they were really whimpering and crying underneath the porch. And I'm like, what? How come, they're crying? They were really scared. That's what caught my attention. And then pretty soon I could hear this, whatever it was on the porch, because I could hear steps on the porch. and it was squeaking. And then pretty soon I hear the like something opening up the screen door. And I was just watching. I told everybody, "Hey, be quiet. There's something out there." And it opened up the screen door. Uh, a few seconds later, I see the doorknobs turning.
Wow.
So I'm like, "What the heck?" And still the dogs are quiet underneath the porch, but they're whimpering. And my brother was kind of in front of the door, and then I had to catch him. Then I was behind it and had my two young ones behind me. And I told my brother, I said, "Open the door. Let's see who it is." And he froze. He couldn't move. He was so scared. He couldn't. He just couldn't move. And so, the door, as the doorknob was still turning, I'm like, maybe someone's just trying to scare us next door. So I went around my brother, and of course I had the deadlock on. As soon as I turned that deadlock, I could hear let go of the doorknob, and I flung that door open, and all I saw in front of me was this tall, hairy thing in front of me standing there. It wasn't very muscular, kind of scraggy looking.
Uh-huh.
I didn't get to see the face because the face was covered in hair, and it had long arms, and it's like we looked at each other for a couple of seconds, and it just darted off the porch, ran to the west and around our home. Now, behind our home, we have this irrigation ditch that runs back there, and it took off back that way. And my brother, of course, my brother, he did see it, and he was kind of, he was freaking out, like, what the heck? And I'm like, oh, that can't be what I'm seeing. What I just saw standing there, was that really, and of course the kids are, what was it? I'm like, this is where I start turning like my mom and dad. Oh, it's nothing. Let's just go to bed. So I told all the kids, and I said, hey, I just shut down everything. I said, let's go to bed. What was it? What was it? I just looked at my brother, and my brother's like, he couldn't believe it. He was like, like, was that, I'm like, shh, don't say anything, because I didn't want to scare my kids.
Right.
And then their cousins, so I shut down everything. We all went to sleep. Probably about 15, 20 minutes later, this thing comes back. So from the time that this thing took off the porch, my dogs still wouldn't come out from underneath the porch. They stayed underneath the porch, just whimpering. I could hear them whimpering. And this thing came back, was turning the doorknob again. I'm like, what the heck? So I flipped on the light, and it darted off. Now, this went on throughout the night.
Wow.
And each time I would turn the light on, but there was probably around, 2 o'clock, I believe, is when I'm like, I want to try to, you know, look and see. I thought maybe it's a skinwalker or something. I'm like, no, this is not a skinwalker. And so our bedroom window faces right where we could see people walking, up to the porch. So I opened the curtain, and I looked out, and I could just see this black tall thing just standing at the front door. And it was turning the doorknob. I'm like, okay, what does this thing want? So I would drop something and hear it, and it would take off. So and it took off again. It would come back, like I said, throughout the night. It came back probably around 3:30 or 4. Around that time, I think, is when I jumped. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go jump into the truck, and I'm gonna drive around and see where this thing went. So I locked everybody. Told my brother, watch these guys, and I locked everybody in, and I took off, and I drove around and down to the north end of the field, and I drove around to the end of the main road, and I turned west. And finally, one of the dogs came out of underneath the porch and followed me. And if I would have just watched her,
Uh-huh.
and just if I just kept my eye on her at the same time as I was driving, I probably would have seen this thing. At about halfway, heading west, the dog, I noticed, stopped, turned around. She was crying, and she ran back home crying. So by the time I got to the end of the corner, at the northwest corner of the field. There's some big old like brushes there, big bushes.
Uh-huh.
And had I stopped, I could have seen where this thing was at. It was bunkered down in that corner, and I had just passed it. And so I went driving all the way down to the south, up around our home, and I didn't see anything. So I just pulled back in and went back into the house. About 20 minutes after I did that, shut everything down, this thing came back again.
Wow.
What it wanted, I don't know what it wanted, what it was trying to do. I remember just locking the screen door, and I could hear it, pulling on that. And each time I would just drop something so it could hear it and it would take off. Um, it would come back each time, and like I said, I don't know what it wanted, what it was trying to do. By 6 o'clock, when daylight started breaking, everything just stopped. About 5:30, almost 6, everything stopped. And then my husband pulls up I believe it was about 7 o'clock, and I told him what was going on, what had happened, and he was like, "Oh man," and of course he goes, "That's probably just a skinwalker." And I'm looking at him, "No, this is not a skinwalker." And so I described to him what I had seen, and he's just like, "No way." And I said, "Okay, let's go look for footprints, around the house." So we walked behind the house, and I did find a pretty big footprint. At the time, I didn't bother to take a picture of it or to measure it. And the closest thing that comes close is, the movie, That Legend of Boggy Creek, when the young boys find a footprint at that creek, right?
Right.
Had only 3 toes. Exact same footprint I found right behind our home. And it
Wow.
was like in the soft dirt, kind of had a little bit of moisture to it. So it left a good impression there. Exact same footprint that I found in the back. And so I showed my husband, I said, "Look at this." And he's like, "Oh," that kind of shook him up a little bit,
Uh-huh.
Kind of scared him, like, "What the heck?" So,
Now, wait a
um,
second, Brenda.
yes.
Your husband says, "Oh, it may just be a skinwalker." Like, that's no big deal, but a
Yeah.
Bigfoot is.
Yeah. I, yeah.
What's up
It's
with
funny.
that? I think I'd be more worried about the skinwalker than the Bigfoot.
The Skinwalker to me, it doesn't bother me because I know what it is. And so, but the Bigfoot is different, because you can see it, and versus a Skinwalker, um, most people can't see it. You can see it as it moves. It'd be standing there, then all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. They move so fast,
Uh-huh.
you know. Um, the Bigfoot, you can literally see, and you can see the footprints. You can smell them. A lot of the times, some of the native people will say it's not a Bigfoot, it's a Skinwalker, because they kind of have almost the same smell, I guess. But the Bigfoot is more potent than the Skinwalker smell. And so some people says, "Oh, you're just mistaking it for a Bigfoot." So I'm like, "Oh no, no, I don't think so." And
So
I'm like, "Okay, well, how do you explain this footprint then? Come look at this." And then we're like, "Oh, okay, no, it's not a Skinwalker."
so so
So
the average Navajo person's opinion is in doubt of the existence of Bigfoot.
sometimes, very few, but there's a lot of them. They know that it's real. They've Many have encountered them, and they've been here for a long time. Um, I see that it looks like I'm getting kind of dark. I'm gonna turn some light on real quick.
Yes, that would be
Okay.
great.
Okay. Remember, anybody that has a question, put it in all caps and we'll get to it. I see a few on there already, and we will get to those, I promise. I know in the last week we didn't have time, but we should have time this week.
Is that a little bit better?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Like, yeah, I'm sitting in the dark.
Larry, do we have any questions that we want to address with?
What? Well, it must be a story that Can Squatch knows about. A story of a digital thermometer and a drastic difference on it from what the temperature was. Do you know what he's talking about there, Brenda?
No.
No.
Uh,
Okay.
is he asking about the temperature?
Yeah.
Was it cold, freezing? No, it was a very nice, warm evening. Uh, I would say the temperature would have to have been probably in the maybe between 65 and 70, maybe. So it was really nice summer evening.
How tall do you believe this creature was?
This one was between 6 and 7.
Really? So it
Yeah,
was at least an older juvenile that,
yeah,
and so that it, to me, that's just baffling about once he was scared off, why he would keep coming back knowing that y'all knew that he was out there.
yeah. You know what was I noticed too was that it did, it would come back, but it would only come around um, when my husband wasn't there. That was one thing that I noticed, and it was just me and the kids that were home. And each time that I was home alone with the kids, that's when I would start hearing things like tapping on the bedroom, not the bedroom window, but at the time the kitchen window or the back door in the kitchen. Uh, I could hear the doorknob turning or tap on the window.
Uh huh.
And each time it was just me and the kids were home alone. For some odd reason, it knew when we were home by ourselves, and it was never. It wouldn't come around when my husband was home until, let's see, maybe after 2.5 months goes by. I remember we had just pulled up. We had ran out town and we got home and we were unloading our groceries, taking them in the house. And when he set stuff on the table, he heard like something hit the window, like a bang or something. And it was the back door. He heard like something hit the back door really hard. He was like, "What the heck?" He took off running to the back door, and he goes, and I come running around, I was like, what's going on? What's happening? Because something hit the back door, and he goes, I don't see anything back there. And I'm like, maybe it's him again. He's back this time again, but this time he was home, and it did it a couple of times, then it stopped, and it didn't do anything else. It took off, I guess.
That seems to be a common denominator. If people are living in a rural area and
Hmm.
when the man is gone, it seems like the activity ramps up when it's just
Hmm.
the women and children that are there.
Hmm. Yep.
Did any of your neighbors have any similar incidents around this time, or was it just centered on
Um,
your house?
no, other people had some things going on, but they wouldn't say anything. They just kept it really to themselves during that time. Among the natives, we're not supposed to talk about stuff like this.
Hmm.
Why? I don't know. They just say, just leave it alone, let it do what it needs to do and move on. Just we were always told just to leave it alone and don't talk about it because it was a bad thing if you talk about it. But now, times have changed, and a lot more people down in our area have seen it more, and a lot of people have had encounters with this thing, and so now people are talking, which I'm really glad. People are talking more about it, and uh, by me getting out the word, hey, be careful. This thing is out here. We've had some things that had happened to some people down in our community with their livestock um, being killed and stuff like that. And nobody went saying anything until I'm like, I talked to my husband. I said, somebody needs to say something
Yeah.
and speak up about, hey, get the word out. This thing is out there. You know, people are seeing it and smelling it and hearing it. It's there. Um, so I told my husband, I said, do you think should I bring it up before the chapter and, just get the word out there? And he goes, well, you can, but I don't know if they'll do it. So I asked him to see if I could get on the agenda. And of course, the officials were really kind of like, I don't know, because, they thought I might give the chapter a bad name. And here I am bringing up about Bigfoot, because there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of people that, you know, don't want to talk about it or don't believe it. They're kind of more worried about being made fun of and stuff like that. I'm like, well, and I start telling them what's been going on, what's, some of our community members, what have happened to their livestock. I just, nobody ain't going to say anything. I might as well say something. So they were kind of a little iffy on that. And they finally gave me the okay to speak, at the chapter meeting. So I did. And I just, want to, get the word out. And, it was a really good turnout. And a lot of people, after we were done with the meeting, uh, you know, told me, thank you very much. I got more thank yous than I did um, someone being negative. There was only one person out of maybe 90, close to 100 people there at the meeting that was being negative about it and kind of making fun of it, which was okay. Um, I'm more focused on the people that want to hear it and just kind of give them some, safety things that they can try. And so that I did, and it went really good. It really did, and getting the word out there. And the main thing I told the people is get more light out. I moved out here back in '86 in Upper Fruitland areas where I reside, and during that time, very few people had street lights here, just very here and there. But after I stood up at the chapter meeting and told the people, hey, get some light up, because light is your best friend.
Right.
And these things, they don't like light. But I told them, but also, you need to be aware because they're starting to come out, being more daring coming out during the light. So just be careful anyway. And so um, after that, I noticed people started getting street lights. And I remember when I had the very first Bigfoot conference back in, I think it was 2012 or 12 or 13, very first one. I had a guy from the electric company out of Shiprock. Yeah, it's called NTUA. He came up to me and he says, "So you're the one? He goes, so you're the one?" I'm like, "Okay, what did I do and who are you?" And he goes, "Because of you, we are so backed up on street lights." He goes, we are having so many people get street lights put up on their properties now. I'm like, oh, really? I said, well, that's a good thing. At least you guys get in business, right? He's kind of laughing. He goes, yeah. He goes, well, I said, these things, they don't like light. So the more light you can get up, the better. And now today, some of these, the community members around our area, some of them on one property alone have 4 street lights up. Some have 3, some have 2. And so, the word really got out down our way. And so everybody, they put up a lot of light up, which is really, really good, especially around their livestock. I always tell them, hey, light up your livestock. Because some of them I've noticed their livestock, their corrals are more off to the side of the house and to the back where it's really dark. And this is where these things will come out and start attacking their animals.
um,
And so,
you
go
are
ahead.
pretty much the go-to person on the res when someone starts having activity. And I think a lot of times people are afraid of the ridicule, and
Yeah.
and they are really comfortable talking to you. And just one other thing, I really appreciate how you share with people and you spread the word of awareness of these creatures. Because
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you, it's really foolish to believe they are our little forest friends and that we need to be cautious when we go into
Yeah.
their environment. Um,
Oh yeah.
you know, you've heard of firsthand. I know you have heard of firsthand accounts from people where encounters have gone bad. Uh,
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about why we need to be aware of these dangers that could happen.
Well, we just don't know, a lot about these things. We're all still learning, and you know, these things could act like they're nice and cuddly, that some people would say and I'm like, no, 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 you've got to be very careful because, we don't know what triggers these things to maybe attack or do something that could really harm us. We don't know what their thoughts are or what can, like I say, what can trigger them to go like on a rampage. We don't know.
Right,
It sometimes, it may just happen out of the blues, and you can may not be doing anything, and all of a sudden, boom, this thing gets upset. We don't know, unless it has a very young one, just like a bear, has its cub. They don't want you around their cubs. The same way with these things. But if you go into an area where there was a big old branch that's covering, or a big old tree that was covering the road, that could have been them pushing that tree over there because they don't want you going across that because they have a family there. Maybe they have a very young baby one
right.
and they don't want you close by. That's why they do stuff like that. And if you go, they'll chase you out. They don't want you there if they see you. And if especially, like I said, if they have a baby one there, they do not want anybody in those areas, and they will get mad. Um, Other than that, for them just to go off, who knows? Maybe they just don't want you there, period. Maybe that's why they get upset and start throwing rocks and stuff, and yells, they want you out of there. They don't want you around. It's their place. And so yeah, anything could trigger them. So,
Right.
regardless, I mean, if you're a very good if you call yourself a good expert and in the Bigfoot world, and you can go out and you say, "Oh, they're nice and nice and whatever." But what happens just out of the blue if this thing turns around and attacks you for no odd reason? Then what?
Yeah.
You've got to be careful regardless because, like I said, we don't really know, what they're up to, what they want. We don't really know. We just got to be really careful. Everybody out there that, does these investigations or goes looking for evidence, just you got to be careful regardless. You just never know.
Usually, if someone says they're an expert or if they talk like they're an expert, that's usually a red flag for me to run the other way. I
Yep,
I think that we need to be more humble and
yep,
listen to other people and
that's right.
I think that will help us connect the dots as
Oh
far
yeah,
as trying to figure these creatures out maybe.
yeah, yep. That's true. When someone says they're an expert, I just look at them. What school did you go to for a Bigfoot expert? 'Cause I sure would like to know. You know. It's not that I'm making fun of them, but it's just like, how do you figure you're an expert? I mean, everybody that's in this Bigfoot world, we're all doing the same thing. We're trying to gather evidence of driving hair, casting footprints, looking at all of these uh what do you call those huts, like homes,
Right.
tree branches, well, all of that. We're all doing the same thing. And so I guess that makes all of us experts. Yeah, so, I just don't buy an expert.
Yeah, it seems
But
like the more that I learn, the more that I figure out that I really don't know squatch about
mhm,
what's going on. It's just amazing to me. Once I think that I start, maybe I'm connecting a few dots and figuring out a little something, and then
yeah,
something happens and I realize, whoa, that came out
yep,
of left field. I that's why it's so dangerous to me to put your opinions in a box and refuse to take that opinion out every now and then and reevaluate it instead of seeing evidence and trying to squeeze and mold it into your opinion. You should look at each piece of evidence as fresh evidence and don't let
that's right.
anything else try to manipulate your thinking and mold it into what you already believe what your opinion is.
That's right. That's so true. You know what? We're all still learning. We got a long ways to go. And it's all the pictures, the videos, that is out there. You know, if even if I come across a really good picture, a good video, there's gonna always be
Yeah,
someone. Oh, that's fake. That's fake.
yeah,
You know. So, no matter how hard that we all try, everybody out there that's in this field, um, all I can say to you is just keep doing what you're doing. And you can't let these other people get you down. And they don't know. They're not where you're at. You're the one that's out there in the field.
yeah,
You know what you've seen, you know what you've heard, you know what you've smelt out there. You know, you know all of that. These guys don't. A lot of these people, they just sit behind the computer and rant and
absolutely.
rave, and that's all they know how
Yeah,
to do. They
And
don't.
the
They
negative,
don't.
the negative people are gonna have the loudest voice normally
Oh
too.
yeah, that's true. That's so true.
I remember when Bear and Dan and myself come out there, and we were standing on your in your front yard, and I believe it's to the north of your house that you had the San Juan River that flows,
Yes.
and we were facing south, and there was like a mountain there, and Dan looks, and I don't know if it was 3/4 of a mile away or whatever, but there's no grass. You just got to
Uh,
figure it looks like it's sand, like a
yeah.
sand mountain. And Dan goes, "That looks like a trackway." And and we got to looking, and that mountain was really tall, and it looked like a trackway, and
hmm
we hollered at Ryan, your sons, and said, "Hey, have you got some binoculars?" And he went
Uh-huh.
inside and got some binoculars, and we started looking at it,
Uh-huh.
with binoculars, and
Uh-huh.
it was like, that's a trackway. The next day we went and looked at it, but
Uh-huh.
at your conference, there you were allowing people to camp out there on your
Uh-huh.
property, and they talked about uh, hearing something coming through that night.
Yeah.
And so it's what I really like about New Fruitland and the New Mexico area. It's different than what it is out east of the Mississippi where we're at and other
Uh-huh.
places that you've got so much territory to cover
Oh yeah.
because of the woods, but
Yeah.
really the greenery is around the river basins. And so that really helps a lot with
Oh yeah.
researchers out there that want to go and research.
Uh-huh. That's true. It's really true. We have right behind our home here, um, it's been coming, running through, and it still does. It runs through our property. Several months ago, probably going on 5 months ago, 5 months now, about two, no, actually, since, yeah, about six, maybe 6 months ago, about 2 o'clock in the morning. Um, oh, let me think. I was doing something, or was I up, or I think I had to go run to the bathroom or something. Yeah, it was about 2 in the morning. I got up, used the bathroom, and as soon as I stepped out, and when I came back in, my husband was laying. He was like frozen here. I mean, he like had that really scared look, and I'm like, okay, what's wrong? He goes, that thing's out there, and it just tapped on the window. He goes, and I could, I could smell it when I was walking through the kitchen back to the bedroom. I could smell, that awful smell. And when I looked at him, just that fear in his eyes, and he goes, it just tapped on the window. I said, oh, okay. I said, it smells bad. It's here. So he said, it tapped on the window twice, and then it went around and it was gone. And so I grabbed the flashlight, and my husband, he's scared of these things, and he won't go out. So here I grabbed the flashlight, turned the porch light was on. So I walked out onto the grass, and I was flashing the light around, and I didn't see it, but I could hear the dogs on the south side of us. The whole neighbor's dogs were just barking. I'm like, okay, I darted across the road into the field, heading south. The next morning when I got up, I looked at on those mesas there. Do you remember those hills up there to the
Right?
south of our home?
Uh-huh.
It ran up those hills up there,
Wow.
and I'm like, okay, there it is. It did. It came by, and then just recently, um, probably going on what maybe about 2 weeks now. This thing has been coming by, running through our property. It was probably about midnight. Yeah, it was about midnight because I was just getting ready to shut down everything. And my husband, he has this little dog, a little chihuahua. And all of a sudden, I mean, it smelled so bad. I had the windows open. I'm like, oh my God, it's here. So I'm like, okay. And our dog, she was just going off. We have in our bedroom, we have an east window, and she just barked at that window. And at the time, I had our bed that was against that window, so we had like a metal frame against that window. My husband's like, "Oh my God, this thing's here!" And he's watching his dog, and it was just barking at that window. I'm like, "Oh my God, he's gonna put his hand through the window." Well, it's gonna hit that metal frame before it gets to you, you know. And so, but he was watching the dog, and that dog literally, it was following. Here's the window, so it was like going like this. The dog was following the side of the house, and then to the south window, and she was going nuts. And this thing walked around our house to the east, I mean, to the south window, and it goes, I believe it walks by my son's bedroom window because his two dogs were going crazy. And I mean, they were just barking. I'm like, okay, it's out there. So I grabbed the light and I told my son, let's go out there. I said, it's out here in the front somewhere, probably by the parking lot somewhere, where we parked our vehicles. So I grabbed the light, we took off outside, flashed the light. I didn't see anything, but it did dart off to the south side of the field, across the road into the field, because the neighbors, um, up the hill there, just before the mesa, I mean, um, I noticed that someone jumped into the right and turned on their headlights, and their headlights was facing west. I'm like, okay, that thing is over there because they turned their headlights on. I mean, the dogs were going crazy. Walked around, so we're kind of following and just stood at the end of the road there, and we were watching to see what they were going to be doing. And they had their lights on for probably a good maybe 15 minutes, and I think must have ran along the ditch road because, and then heading west because uh, the dogs to the west, they were all going crazy. The next morning, found different tracks. on the west side this time. So I'm like, wow. And that was like about 2 weeks ago. So it's
Wow.
been running around, and I had just posted some pictures of a small footprint.
That was last
Probably,
night. Was that
yeah,
what you posted
yeah,
last night? Uh-huh.
yes. And then I found some other tracks. I'm going to get ready to post those. I haven't posted those, and these ones they look like about maybe the same prints. I mean the size. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and these ones are perfectly. They were. It stepped in mud, and you could see that it had. Looks like it must have had some really long, sharp toenails. You could see those. So I'm going to post those later on this evening.
Cool.
And yeah, it walked around, and I was like, holy cow! So it was like in different locations that I found those uh, footprints. So yeah, but yeah, we're having some activity here, and people here yelling around, I believe around 3 or 4 o'clock early in the morning. Sometimes the yelling will start about maybe around 10,
Uh-huh.
and then it stops for a while. Maybe the next night it'll be about 3 or 4 o'clock in the mornings when we start hearing the yells again. So it's harvest time, so it's raiding some of the community members' gardens right now. Just last Sunday, this past Sunday, one of our neighbors had their garden raided. You could see
Wow.
in where it sat down and was eating corn, ate a lot of their corn.
Huh.
Wow.
So,
Brenda, I know your kids are older now, but as they were younger and growing up playing outside, did they have any daylight encounters or anything?
no, I would ask them, but no,
Huh.
no.
I'm going to ask Brenda to tell a story, but before we get into that story, do we have any questions that we need to address with what we've talked about so far?
Well, we do have a few.
Okay.
If I can get way back up there to them. I know one, Debbie Jones is wanting you to explain what a skinwalker is, if you don't mind.
Um, well, it's kind of a little bit of a long process where um, if you want to, I guess, try to become one of those, they say that you have to uh, basically kill one of your family members um, to take. I'm trying to explain it here. To do the duties of a skinwalker, which is you're going to go out and do a lot of witchcraft and stuff, and try to hurt someone if you don't like someone, or if a family member, or it could be a friend that doesn't like someone, so they hire someone to go harass them. This is where a skinwalker will literally go into. They could either turn into a bear or to a wolf, they say. And but like I said, it goes, if you go on this, I never thought I would find this on the internet, but if you go into the internet and look up how to become a skinwalker, it literally tells you in detail if you
Wow.
want to read about it. I came across that not too long ago, and I'm like, wow, I never thought I would find this on the internet. But if she wants to go, on the internet, explains how it works, it's, to me, it's nothing but witchcraft, and I don't deal with that. I don't go running around chasing skinwalkers.
Me
No,
neither.
that's no.
I,
Somebody else can do that.
I
I
can
don't deal with that.
remember. I can remember Baron Kumbo talking of one that they saw at LBL, and that's the closest one I've heard of. And I don't want to see it.
Yeah, they're quick. I tell you what, they can move.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, she wants to go on the internet, wants to learn a little bit more. Just punch in how to become a skinwalker. It's on the internet there.
Mm. She's not that interested in
Good. That's good.
it.
That's one thing to stay away from.
I agree with that. Uh, this is in relation to your face encounter you had? Did you happen to see its eye color?
No, because like I said, it was covered in hair. All I saw was hair, long hair over its face, throughout the whole body.
What color was the hair?
It was black.
Black.
Hmm.
All right. Heather Bradley asked, how old were the children at the time this happened?
They were, let's see, 5 and 6 years old.
And were male, female? I know you got a.
I got a boy and a girl.
And you said you had some cousins there, I believe?
Yes, yes. They were all close in age.
Okay. All right. I'm scrolling. A lot of chatting going on tonight.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, while you're scrolling, when I was out there, Brenda said that after the conference, she goes, "Now be quiet. We don't want a bunch of people going, but I'm gonna take y'all up on the mountain tonight, and where there was something that happened to me and my sister, and later on me and my daughter, and all I remember is when you told me that, Miss Brenda, I started shouting out, I got dibs in Brenda's truck because we were going to have to go in two vehicles. And I don't know. I really cherish that truck ride that we took up here because I know it took at least an hour to get up to the mountain. And Miss Brenda would drive and she would like point and she would say, now over here, now this is where so-and-so happened. And she would tell the story and go into great detail. And about the time she would finish telling the story, we'd come up on something else and she'd say, now right over there, now this is what happened over here. And this was like all the way up till we got to the mountain. And I don't know, I just cherish that truck ride that we took up there. But why don't you tell us about what happened to you and your sister that night up on the mountain?
Okay. This was, so let me see. I think it was 2012 maybe, or 2010, I think, between 10 and 11. I'm trying to remember here. But it was in October, I believe October 9th, if I remember right. My sister, at the time, she used to be with the PD in Ignacio, Colorado. It was on a Sunday. Sunday morning, she gives me a call and she says, "Hey, let's go camping. Let's go out to the Gucci guy. Maybe we can go get some vocalizations or something. Let's go camp out there." I'm like, "Okay." So, get all my stuff together, and she finally gets here about, must have been about 7 in the evening. I'm like, well, it's gonna be dark, pretty dark when we get up there. So we got up there. We left here around 7, got up there around 9. Takes a little time. We're just taking our time getting up there. And in this area that I really like to go, and a very active area. It's like in a little valley, very dark area. So we get there. By the time we got there, it was about 9 o'clock, I believe. If I remember right, it was around 9. And I had pulled in, and there's this little campfire. So I passed that, kind of did a loop, did a U-turn. And I thought, well, that's a little too close to the campfire. So I backed up and moved away from there, and I turned the ride back around. So that way, if I needed to get out, we need to get out quick, just hop in the ride and take off. And so we parked there. And as I was pulling in, there was absolutely no logs at all when we first pulled in. Okay. So when we pulled in, I did like a U-turn. And so the campfires, just a little ways from the ride. And we get out and I leave the headlights on. So we started scrounging for some wood, dry wood. We're making, of course, I'm making noise and all. We're gathering wood. And probably about 10, 15 minutes into doing all of that, all of a sudden my sister was on the probably on the east side, and I was on the west side, and I was collecting wood. And all of a sudden, I was bringing an armful back and dropping it there close to the campfire, little camp um, thing there. And oh, my sister's, hey, she stopped. She goes, "Did you hear that?" And I'm like, "No, because I'm over here making a lot of racket getting wood, and you're stepping on dry twigs and leaves, so you're kind of making a lot of noise, right?" And my sister, "Did you hear that?" And I'm like, "No. What did it sound like? What did you hear?" She goes, "It sounded like loud thug thug, like something dropped." I'm like, "No, I didn't hear it because I'm over here making noise." So I just kind of brushed it off, and we gathered wood, and finally we get the fire going. Now it's just her and I now, and we get the fire going. And when I say we get that fire going, we got that fire going big. So it's bright enough to where we could see all the way around us, right? So we pulled out the chairs and we're just sitting there and we start talking and stuff. And about 15 minutes goes by, and I said, "Well, where should we set up our tents?" And she looked at me and she goes, "Oh, no, no, that's okay. We'll just sit and listen. And no, we won't camp." And all of a sudden, she kind of got scared. I think she might have sensed something there around, especially after she heard that loud, like something dropped, something heavy dropped. About maybe another 15 minutes goes by, and we're talking and all. By the time it's about 10, a little after 10 o'clock, and it starts getting cold. And so I get up to go to the Jeep and go to the back. And just when I, come around the back there, and I noticed this huge log, oh, huge, and it was really long. And I'm like, that was not there when we pulled up. So I told my sister, I said, "Hey, come here, look at this." I said, "This log wasn't here when we pulled up, right?" She goes, "No." I said, "This is probably what you heard dropped." It's huge. I mean, really long. And I'm like, okay, maybe we startled this thing or something, and it dropped the log there. Because there was something when before we started that fire, when I put my hand in that fire pit there, I noticed there was red ashes still. It was still kind of hot a little bit. I'm like, wait a minute. And I knew the guys, there was a couple of guys there that stayed there on a Saturday night. My sister and I got there Sunday evening. And I'm like, well, I know the guys were there earlier, but that was last night. And they took off back home, early Sunday morning. And I'm like, wow, why are the ashes still red? And like, then I started kind of putting like, I wonder if they were going to start the fire back up, because of that wood that they dropped. I was kind of putting that together a little. And so my sister's just she started getting kind of scared. And we sat back down. I grabbed my jacket, sat back down. And it was probably around, like I said, it was after 10. And I had we had our chairs facing to the west. And there's a little road that goes towards the back, but it doesn't go very far because it's like a dead end. And every now and then, and being that we had the fire so bright, we could kind of see back there. And my sister, she would say, "There's something coming." She goes, "I can see it's walking towards us, but it's moving from tree to tree." And so I flashed the light down that way, and I didn't see anything. It's not. I don't see anything, and I said, "I don't see anything." So I'd get up and I would walk back there, and I'd have my camera and I would take pictures. I would go back and I'd sit down, we'd talk again, and about 15 minutes goes by. By this time, it's about 10:30, and she'd look at me and she goes, "That thing's coming." She goes, "I can see it, sis. It's moving from tree to tree." Again, I'd flash the light that way and I wouldn't see anything. And then sort of sat back down. We just started talking and stuff. 11 o'clock rolls around, and all of a sudden, it just gets real quiet. I mean, just dead silence. I'm like, okay, it's around. I could hear around. Not only could she see to the west that something's coming, walking towards us, we could also hear something to the east of us, behind us. Something's moving around, walking around. We could hear twigs breaking. And originally it's 12 o'clock. And flashlight, we're talking and get, just having a good evening. And she's, I look at her and she goes, sis, that thing is getting really close now. I can see it. And I flashed the light down that way. And aspen trees, the trunk of aspen trees are not very big. And so when I flashed the light that way, I'm like, oh, I don't see anything. And she goes, I'm telling you, I can see it. It's going from tree to tree and it's getting closer and closer. And I sit down, we talk and we'd flash the light every now and then around us and we could still hear footsteps or, breaking branches behind us too. And we would talk by sometimes after 12, about 12:30. And this time when I looked at her, she's like, it's just right there. And that I could see that fear in her eyes. And so I flashed the light that way and I get up and I'd walk that way. And when I got to that certain point, I'd stop. And then I started smelling that smell. I'm like, okay, it's just right there. So I told my sister, I said, hey, come here, which is a mistake I shouldn't have done. I told her, I said, come here. I said, do you smell that? And she just freaked out. And I flashed the light, and there it was. It was probably about a good, maybe 55, between 55 and 60 yards away from us. It was getting really close. When I flashed the light to it, like I said, the aspen trees, the trunk's not very big. So this thing, when I flashed the light on where it was standing right along the side of that aspen tree. And what I could see is the back side of it, so like the head all the way down. I could see the whole back. The hair color was reddish brown. And once she saw that and got that smell, she panicked. And this is one thing that you don't do is you start freaking out and start throwing things in the vehicles because they'll know something's up and then they'll start coming in quicker. So I literally had kind of a hard time getting my sister, hey, calm down. It's okay, I'll get you out, we'll get out. So she grabs stuff and starts throwing it in the ride. I'm like, no, 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 don't do that. Just play calm. I said, we're going to be okay. And so she was just panicking. I mean, she grabbed the chairs and grabbed stuff and started throwing it into the ride. We get things in the ride. And I told her, hey, just calm down. By this time, I could literally hear like this thing closing in on us like this. And so I'm like, what about the fire? Because we had that fire going. And I was kind of hoping, I wanted the fire to go down. Well, let's let the fire go down. We'll see what happens. And oh no, she was already down on her hands and knees throwing dirt on the fire. And I'm like, okay. So, we got it out enough to where it'd be okay to go. So we get in the ride and we go and on the road, like I said, I faced the ride to the road there. As you're going up, there's a little hump. And then you got to take a right, just kind of like do this and turn. And so I did that, and there is no tree stumps, no boulders or nothing on that road. And we started heading out. I just barely stepped on the gas and started going. All of a sudden, I feel this like something grabbed underneath the Jeep and like just pulls and holds it. And she, my sister really got scared. She was like, what are you doing? I said, I'm not doing anything. I said, something's holding down the Jeep. And I told her, I said, listen, I said, you're going to have to crawl back there and see what's holding on to the Jeep. I said, I know there's no tree stump back there. There's no boulders that the Jeep I could have got hung up on. There's absolutely nothing there. Crawl back there and see what's holding it. Oh, she wouldn't do it. She was so scared. I'm like, okay. So I reversed it. I said, hang on, I reversed it to see if I could bump it. So I put in reverse, stepped on the gas, and I didn't feel nothing. Put it in drive, hurry up and took off. I started going a little bit, and again, that tug. I mean, like something grabbed onto the Jeep underneath and just held onto it. I couldn't go. And she's like, you're doing this. I'm like, no, look at my feet on the gas pedal. It's all the way down. And she was freaking out. And I told her, get your gun out and get ready. And so again, I shoved it into reverse and it took off, you know, nothing. I said, okay, hang on, here we go. Took off again. And it did the same thing. This time, I mean, it held on to that Jeep like it didn't want us to leave. And my sister, she's like past panicked by now. I'm like, listen, don't worry, I'll get you. We'll be okay. Just calm down. And so again, I bumped it put it into reverse, took off, nothing. Went down, put it into drive again, stepped on the gas, and we got a little further. But this time, this is the fourth time now. This thing just held on to the Jeep. And she's like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" I said, "We'll get out. Don't worry. Just be calm. And she was just so scared. And man, I put it in drive. I took off again. Once I really took off again, and I could feel it finally let go, and the Jeep just took off, and we hightail out of there, all the way out to the main dirt road. And she looked at me. She's like, once we got onto that main dirt road, she looked at me. She goes, "Oh my God, sis, one is right beside us. I can see it's falling, running right alongside us." I looked at her and I said, "Yeah, I see one right beside you too." And I hit the brakes. I said, "You see one back there behind us?" I hit the brakes. She goes, "Oh yeah, I see it." And there was like three of them. It like followed us all the way out. I mean, it ran all. And I was probably going about 45 to 50 miles an hour. I mean, we hightailed out of there, and it took us about a good maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 25 minutes to get out of there. And I hightailed it all the way out to the main highway. Once we hit that main highway, we're back home. And these things, they stopped just before we hit the highway. They stopped following us. And that's what happened that night. And that was the last time she went out there. That was scary. That was really scary. Um, I took one of I'll share another story with you real quick. Back in 2013, I think it was 13 or 14, I took my oldest sister out there with her two sons. I said, "Hey, let's go out there." And we left the house really late. It was about 10 o'clock. We got out there about 11:30. And they had never been out to this area. And by the time we got out there, and I'm like, "Yeah, so this is the area I like to camp out." They're looking at me, "You're crazy. This is a very scary place. How can you get out of here so quick? This is really scary." I said, I turned the light off, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is even scary. This is pitch black down here." And we sat there for a while, and we could hear branches breaking and stuff. We'd hear a growl every now and then. And my sister got really uncomfortable, and the boys were a little bit scared. So we sat there for maybe a couple hours, maybe 2.5 hours, something like that. And I started getting this really uncomfortable feeling. I'm like, okay, this does not feel right. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's get out of this area. So we got out of there, and we sat more further out to the main dirt road. We sat in this one little area where it's really open just before you go into that little valley there. So just picture this area where it's really grassy and it's open. So we sat there. I pulled up and right in that area. And right, probably as soon as I pulled up right there to that little area, that open area there, we sat there not even 10 minutes. I hear this loud boom coming from the west, right behind us. And I looked at to my sisters and my nephews. I'm like, "Did you guys hear that?" And they're like, "No, no." About 10 minutes goes by. I swear this thing was right to the right of us on top of the ledge there. and it was another loud boom. And we're like, what the heck is that now? I mean, the closest thing that I can describe that boom is like something heavy walking is, you know, the movie Jurassic Park where the dinosaurs are, then when they walk, you hear that boom. That's exactly what it sounded like. And it was loud. I'm like, what the heck is that? And we took off. About a mile down the road, we come around this curb, and on the left hand side, there's this big old boulder and some pine trees on top. And right when I come around the corner, I swear this thing was running along the side of us and made it up onto the top where that boulder is and took another huge boulder because I had my window and my nephew had his window open, took another big rock and just slammed it down onto that boulder. And you could just hear that boom, like crash, you know. And we just looked at it like, holy crap. I mean, we took off. I mean, we were out of there. And that really scared my sister and my nephews. And they're like, holy crap, what the heck? You know, I said, wow, that's the first time I had ever um, uh, had that thing, you know, pick up another boulder and slam it onto another boulder. So, see, this is why I say to be very careful. All you people out there that go out and do investigations or go out just to go camp to go look for evidence, we weren't doing anything but sitting there and listening. This is what happens. So, like I said, anything could trigger it. We don't have, sometimes we don't, as people, we don't have to do anything for it to go off. Why did it go off and do that? I don't know. I mean, it scared us. I mean, that scared me there. And I was like, wow, you know. So, wherever you go, even this goes for myself, I have to be careful. Everybody needs to be careful because, you know, that thing could have just thrown that big old boulder, you know, right at us as we come around that curve there, but it didn't. It just slammed that boulder onto that other one, you know, and crashed, you know. But that was a very scary a scary sound, you know. I mean, to literally hear that on the side of your vehicle, just up the just up the hill. I mean, just literally out the your vehicle window, and you look up, and there it is. Yeah, that was pretty scary. And maybe just didn't like us being there. That's why it did what it did. I don't know, but
Had,
that's what happened.
had your sister learned yet not to jump in the Jeep with you and go somewhere without knowing
Oh
where you're
yeah,
going?
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I'm going to say, and I have said it publicly many times, that the only time that I have actually got to see a booger was when Brenda Harris took me out. And it's kind of funny. We were in that area where Brenda was telling the first story, and I had Larry's FLIR and Bear had his FLIR, and I think Jade was looking through Larry's and Randy Caveman was looking through Bear's, and all of a sudden Randy goes, "There he is! He's running!" And then Jade threw up her FLIR, and she goes, "I see him! I see him!" And you can hear him talking, and I'm sitting there screaming, hit the record button, hit the record button. Well, they
yeah.
didn't know where the record buttons
Oh,
were. And
oh
so
no.
finally I grabbed the one that Jade was looking through and I hit the record button and was able to capture one when he stopped behind a tree and he was tree peeking at us.
Yeah,
And so that was just uh, a great experience that I
yeah.
had that night. It was unforgettable.
Oh, wait, do you remember when we first pulled up? I remember the time was about 5 o'clock, and we all got out of the vehicle before I took you down into that area there. And right as soon as we all got out of the vehicle, we were kind of talking. Remember, right off the bat, they were yelling. Do
Uh
you
huh.
remember
I
that?
do. I
They,
do.
yep, they were yelling, and it was 5 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
They were yelling pretty early.
I'm I'm going to tell you if you have not been to one of Brenda's conferences. It needs to be on your bucket list
Yeah.
because I'm going to tell you now, Larry's done warned me. He says, now you quit bragging on, on Brenda and how much you fell in love with the Navajo people because you're going to piss the Apaches off. And, and but I'm going to tell you, my Cherokee sisters are going to just wring my neck. But I have never, ever had such the best fried bread that I have ever had was from the Navajo ladies. And I've had a lot of the fried bread. But the best, nobody,
Yeah, too
no,
much.
yeah, but nobody touches the Navajo ladies fried bread. I'm going to tell you, and I know
That's right.
I'm going to get reamed out for that, but I'll take it. I'm a big boy, and I'll take it. Larry, have we got any questions? We're man, this is we've been talking an hour and 20 minutes. I cannot believe it. Have
Yeah, Brenda's been waiting on you to take a breath so she could say something. Brenda, we've got a
Yes.
question about the livestock that was being killed or harmed. How do you know that it was a Bigfoot?
We've come across where the horses had scratches on its neck and its behind. The mane of the horse has been tightly braided, twisted. We've also found, like I said, footprints. Um, uh, the the family have heard yells. I've set up cameras where along kind of like around the corral. I did pick up a picture where one was looking right into the camera. I'll have to repost that picture. You could see the eyes and the nose. Um, being that it was so close, the pixel's kind of bad, but you can see it. Um, the There was also where down here in our area, I think it was in August of 2012 or 13. A gentleman went to go feed his horse, and they had just a little puppy too, just brand new little puppy they gotten. He went out the next morning to go feed his horses. Well, when he went to the corral, the horse was dead. His head was broken. The neck was broken,
Hmm.
along with the puppy. The puppy's neck
oh,
was broken as well. Thrown along the side, I believe inside the corral too. He was found. Footprints were found, I believe, inside the corral and outside of the corral as well. We did have some sheep that have been killed, but not this one. I'm gonna throw something a little bit different. I'll go off of Bigfoot here. We did uh, come across where some sheep was killed. Now this wasn't a Bigfoot kill. Bigfoot usually when they kill a sheep, they usually shred it. I mean, they just turn it into pieces. This one was where there was a puncture in the neck. All the blood was drained. Now, this grandma called me. I had a call from the chapter house. The manager at that time told me to come and talk to this grandma. She really wants to talk to you. So I get there, and this grandma's in tears, and she goes, "This thing's killing my sheep. It's they're dead. My sheep are dead." So I went to her place to go look to see what was going on. She thought it was a Bigfoot that killed her sheep, and then when I got there and I looked what was going on, looked at the sheep, there was a puncture hole in the neck, and all the blood was sucked out, and there looked like a surgical slit, probably about like that big,
wow.
um, on the side of the abdomen, and a lot of the insides was hanging out of that. And I looked at the grandma and I told her, I said, "Listen, I said, this is not a Bigfoot kill. This is something else." And that year we had a lot of people that lost 25 sheep in one night. There was another about a week later. Another family lost about 35 sheep to the same thing, but it was not a Bigfoot kill. It was something else. People that year were really scared, and they were very baffled of like, what the heck is this? What's going on? And I'm like, well, this is not a Bigfoot kill. This is something else. Um, and it kind of threw all of us for a loop, like, what the heck is this? But we've had that hasn't happened in a while, but we've come up. A lot of people now have come up with a lot of their sheep are missing, the dogs and cats are missing. Some of their other livestock, have come up missing, like sheeps and chickens, and stuff like that, have come up missing. And what's always left behind is sometimes their footprints that people come across.
So, what out of the sightings you've had, what have been the colors you've seen? Debbie Jones is asking because she saw a gray one.
I've seen a black one, a reddish brown. Those are the two that I've seen. Um, People around have seen like a silver one, like salt and pepper color looking, and a white one. I haven't come across those two, but the main two that I've seen is reddish brown, dark brown, and black.
All right. Now, somebody asked about a story of Bigfoots being shot and their bodies being taken by men in black.
Yes, that has happened several times. I will share one with one of my relatives. Actually, her son and one of his coworkers were driving back from, as a matter of fact, I believe they work in the oil fields, I think. And they were coming back home late at night, I believe somewhere out of Dulce, heading back home this way. And it was, let me think of the time, must have been about maybe 10 in the evening, something like that. So it was dark. Well, they were coming back home, and something had darted in front of them, and they ended up hitting it. And they thought maybe it was a deer. So they're like, oh, that didn't kind of look like a deer, but they pulled over and like, well, let's take a look at it and see, make sure it was a deer that they hit. So when they pulled over and they, backed up, of course, they backed up their vehicle, their truck, and out of their truck and ran to where this thing was laying. And they looked at it and they're like, oh my God, that is not a deer. They looked at each other and they said that it was um, a small Bigfoot is what they were looking at, and they thought it was dead. And when they looked at it, it was still breathing. It was still alive, but it was out laying on the side. And so they didn't know who to call. They're like, oh my God, who do we call? So they ended up calling the cops, and they get out there. And when they went to go look at it, the cop couldn't believe it was still alive. It was a small one. It was a young one. And they said that the cop made a phone call, and within about 20, 25 minutes, some guys pulled up. I believe they said it was in a black van. All the windows were tinted and all. And these guys grabbed the young guys' phone and erased all the pictures and told them that you never seen it. It didn't happen. Just go home. And they erased all the pictures that they had taken of it. They got it all erased, and they got told to go home, not to talk about, not say anything. And that happened several years ago.
Have you heard of other
So
incidents similar to that?
I've heard the one out there in was this? It's either Saley or Black Mountain, Black Rock, I think it was. The same thing. Someone had shot one. Well, this one they had shot it, and they ended up. I guess from what I heard, understood was that they loaded it up into the truck, and the mistake that the guy did was said something about it on Facebook or text or something, and within they say within about 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes, these guys in a black I think it was in a black van, uh, windows tinted, and they said that they were all like dressed in black, had black sunglasses, whatever, and pulled this guy over, took the body, and erased all the guy's pictures and everything. Did the same thing, and they hauled the body out of there. They said that they cleaned up all the like the blood and stuff of where he shot this thing, and they cleaned up everything. They said, and they hauled it out of here.
Hmm.
Wow. Wow.
That was in Arizona. That was several years ago.
Larry, do we have any more
Mark,
questions?
yes.
Okay, well, let's try
Still,
to go through the questions.
still crazy. Chris is asking about a snowplow breaking one's leg and called you because they didn't know what to do with it.
A snowplow? No, I don't remember that one. I don't remember getting a
Okay,
call on that.
he may have misheard one of the other stories, but
Yeah.
now I know you've been on Finding Bigfoot and you've been on
Yes.
Ghost Adventures. Have you got some little funny story you'd like to share from each one of those?
Oh, the Ghost Adventures. Yeah, my son shared his encounter on that. I'm sure you've all seen that. After that show, things seemed to really calm down, which I was so glad. Zach and the crew, they must have did something after they got done the shoot that night, because when the next day we got home, the phone, our home felt real peaceful, and it was like that for several months, maybe 6 to maybe 8 months, and then I'm gonna say maybe a year after, and then we started kind of hearing things again, and we would hear like footsteps of the door open. My son would also hear the same thing, and I don't give it any attention at all. I just blow it off because that's what they want. They want you to acknowledge them and start doing stuff, like panicking or whatever, or like say, hey, get out of here. So I just ignore it. I don't bother it, and I just prayer, doing lots of prayer, and it stops. So I don't give it any attention. That's the best thing you can do, really. And then also, when you get our home blessed again, it would be good thing to do.
Yeah. So, do you have
But that, yeah.
any funny stories from Finding Bigfoot whenever you filmed with them?
Oh, yeah. It was it was a really good honor to meet these guys and to see how they work and all. I tell you what, Cliff and Bobo, they really know their stuff. So does Matt. He knows his stuff too. Um, the night that I took him to the river, where I told him to throw some rocks into the river, and they usually respond back.
Hmm.
We did that and got some really good respond backs. But just before that rock thrown, we heard, and Cliff heard, a loud growl coming across the river on the north side. And he's like, "Wow, did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah, I heard that." And and he was surprised. He really, really was. And then that's when I told him, they throw a rock in the river, they'll probably respond back. And so he did. We threw a rock in. Maybe about 5 minutes later, boom, came back. The rock was thrown from the north side of the river right towards us. Now, there was another one that was thrown, and Cliff was standing really close to the river. I mean, we were out on the river, but there was one area where it was real rocky, so it wasn't covered with water, so we could walk on there on that edge there. And then
Uh-huh.
there's the river starts really flowing there, so we were just right at the edge of the river. So Cliff was standing right at the edge where the river starts, and all of a sudden this loud, I mean, this boom, I mean, right literally on the side of cliff. He about fell over and splash. I mean, it was like rock on rock. It was a big bowl, big rock that got thrown in. And that really threw Cliff off. It just threw him off, and so did Matt. He's like, "Holy cow!" He's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, did you? I can't believe that just happened." He goes, "Now that was rock on rock. It was a big rock too."
yeah.
He about fell, fell to the ground. That I started laughing, but yeah, I just laughed. I was like, "See, I told you. They do that. They'll throw it back." And so we got some really good response, from doing that. So,
Did they listen to you the
but
rest of the weekend after that, or rest of
oh,
the week?
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And so
That's pretty
they're
cool.
yeah, good people.
Why don't you give us some of your highlights from this year's conference campout that you had?
Sure. Oh, all I can say is you guys sure missed out. I tell you what, it was a huge success. We did we instead of a regular conference where I have people come in, and special speakers and all. I thought, you know what? Why don't let's do a change up this year and do a Bigfoot comp out. We'll do it like an expedition, and I'm like, okay, let's try it. I almost ended up canceling it be due to my husband's health.
Right.
It was so close, I'm like, it'll be okay. And I know my husband will pull through and he'll be all right. I said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and do this conference, this camp out. It would be good for me to get away and get a good breather, you know. And so I did. We went forward. I went forward with the camp out, and we had it out there in Dulce, New Mexico, at Hoyt Velarde's ranch. His family, they have a huge ranch out there.
I love
So we did,
Mr. Holt. He
yeah,
I just enjoyed so much talking to him. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I
yeah.
didn't mean to
That's
interrupt.
all right. That's all right. But yeah, we had it out there on his property, and it was so beautiful up there. The weather was perfect. It was a little hot, but it was perfect. And I tell you what, like I said, you all missed out. We had activity from the beginning to the end. It was awesome. As soon as people got out there, I showed them, well, you can camp out here, back here to the back. And the reason why I had them camp back there is because just right up the mesa, right behind where people were going to be set up their tents, you could see up there on top of the hill there. Hoyt would tell us that they come down up there from there, and they you can hear them yelling. So I'm like, you know what? That's where I want to be, and that's where maybe we can have the people, and they can set up their tents back there. Maybe we'll experience something. And so, like, okay, cool. So everybody's setting up tents, and then later on that evening, the first night, we got dinner. Now Hoyt Velarde's family, sisters and siblings and all, they came in and all did the evening cookouts for us. It was so good. You guys missed out. But it was so good. But at 5 o'clock, about 5:30, we're sitting there. And I kid you not, these things started yelling from the east and then to the north of us. Like, wow, everybody was just like, holy cow. They were so surprised. I was actually shocked myself. I was like, oh wow, they know something's going on down here and they're all yelling, and, that caught everybody's attention. That's the start of it. So we all had dinner and all. And so that night we broke up into groups, and I took one group to one area. Hoyt and another guy, two other guys took another group out, and Hoyt did too. So what we ended up doing was we would gather and see if we, take notes if we had any activity going on. We'll write it down, and then the next night we'll go to the area that had the most activity. Okay, so while we all broke up into groups and we went to these areas, now we had the cooks that stayed behind, plus some of the uh, the campers, some of the people, a few people stayed behind, stayed at camp. There was a couple that stayed at their tent, and I'm not sure if there was anybody else at the tent with them, you know, and because everybody else we had all taken off, and the cooks were still all down by the um, around the campfire. And it was getting dark. They said that as soon as we left, probably about 30 minutes, between 20 and 30 minutes after we had left the campsite, the ones that stayed at the campsite, they started hearing yelling like crazy. At
Wow.
one point, they said they heard one that sounded like a lady screaming her head off. And that scared the couple that was at the tent. They went running to the where the cooks were by the fire, a campfire. So they all stayed there. They were all listening. And not only that, they also saw orbs flying around out in the open fields.
Wow.
This was all going on while we're all, you know, in these areas. So we finally all got back. We got back to the campsite around 1 o'clock in the morning. And so we're all, you know, exchanging notes. Did you guys hear anything? We heard some footsteps and stuff, but nothing, you know, like fantastic. But another group, they had a lot of action where one of my teammates actually saw one standing by the tree as they were pulling out of there. They said it was big and black. It was standing right by one of those pine trees. And they said they also heard footsteps. They could hear some whooping going on. So so the next night, we ended up going to that area where there was a lot of activity going on. And what we ended up doing was half the ones that didn't want to. This is where we did that walk, and this is area where it's really active, a very active area. So we took like 18, I believe 18 people. We hiked this one area, and it's about a good 3 mile walk, walking down from the mountain down to the area where the whole another sort of group of people were down in that area. So people that stayed, that wanted just to stay down and listen, because that's where we were going to meet those guys. They started hearing a lot of yelling down there too. So they had a lot of activity going on while they were waiting us as we were walking down the mountain to go meet up with them. So that's what we ended up doing. And as we were walking down, we could hear some footsteps, and we had rocks thrown at us. Um, One of the guys that had a night vision camera, I think it was an infrared, um, he kind of got left behind. Or actually, we kind of got ahead of him, and he was taking stuff out of his bag for his camera. That's when he got a rock thrown at him, and he that really shook him up. He come running towards us, and his wife was, it was kind of funny because his wife was making fun of him, like, oh my gosh, you got rock thrown. Look at, he's so scared, you know. And I was kind of laughing. It's like, oh no. She goes, yeah, he got a rock thrown at him twice. And that scared him. So he made sure he stayed with us in the group this time. You know, as we were walking down, again, one of the ladies from California that came from, not California, that came from, I think, uh, Louisiana or Mississippi. The three of them came from those areas, and we were walking, and she had a pebble thrown at her too, and she felt that. And then we got walked for a little further down, and as we would walk, we could hear maybe some footsteps, and from a distance, we could hear some yelling going, some howls, or some whooping going on. And then we get further down again. Probably about maybe 30 minutes later, we another rock got thrown at one of another gal. She had a rock that was thrown, and it hit her on top of the head.
Wow.
And we kept on going, you know, while we'd flash our lights and see, we do some yells and wood knocks and stuff. And every now and then we would hear some stuff. And then just before towards the end of the walk there, we flashed our light. We flashed our light to the right, and we one of the gals, I got eye shine on this side, you know. And this thing was walking along the side of us as we were going down the mountain there. And Yeah, so we got eye shine. It was walking, and like I said, everybody flashed the light to the right side of them, and boom, there it was, and it took off, ahead of us. And then that's when we met up with the next group, and they shared with us what they experienced, and they were all hearing yells and stuff like that. A lot of walking tree branches breaking and stuff like that. So, we it was a really really good camp out, a little expedition that we did, and it was everybody got to hear something, everybody experienced something. Well, not only that, let me back this up. The first night, um, when we came back, and like I said, everybody must have pulled in back at campsite around 12 o'clock, but we didn't get there until like 1 o'clock. So we all met at the campfire, talked, shared our experience, what we heard and stuff. And so we turned in for that night. And there's a family from California. Everybody went to sleep. Not sure what time this happened, but the wife heard something walking around their tent. And their son had his tent set up right in front of them. So he was in his own tent. And they could hear, the husband and wife could hear something walking around their tent, and it literally touched their tent.
Whoa.
This thing pushed, had their hand or whatever, this Bigfoot touched their tent. She's, was telling us about the next day. She was so scared. And she's like, her husband too, I'm sure he was pretty scared too. I was not expecting this thing to walk into the campsite, and it did. Um, Not only that, it walked to other people's um, uh, tents, and some of them had their tables set up, and it moved stuff around.
Wow.
And some of them had fingerprints on some of the items, like their coffee, I think their coffee maker or whatever. And some of the pens had, I believe, it had fingerprints on them. And so, this thing did come walking in our campsite that night, the first night. The second night, after the walking out, everybody turned in. Some went back out. They didn't get back to the campsite till 4 in the morning. And once everybody turned out, the young boy, um, he was sleeping in his tent. He could hear something was moving around. And I did. The first night, we heard something walking around our tent that night, but I thought it was one of the guys. And so I'm like, okay, it's just one of the guys. So I just, went back out again. That second night, though, the young man heard something walking around, heavy footsteps. So he looked out his tent, and to the so be on his left side, his left hand side, there was a van that was parked close to their tent. And he happened to look that way, and there's this thing standing right there, right along
Wow.
this guy's van. He That really scared the young guy, and he, I guess they looked at it, like made eye contact, from what I understood, and he said this thing took off right back up into the hills behind their tent, and that scared him pretty bad. And so the guy that was parked there, he was asleep in his van, and of course he didn't see anything because he was asleep. And there's this thing. I believe it left like a brush, like a maybe a hand mark, like it I like kind of like did this like a smear,
Uh huh.
on the side of his van. And they found footprints too around the people around their tent, and then the guy's van. They found footprints in those areas. So it did come into camp those 2 nights. So we had a lot of activity. Everybody experienced something. So next year we are going to do another Bigfoot campout again. And this event, it's a free event. So if anybody wants to come out there, inbox me, let me know. And we did this in August. Um, Next year, I'm thinking of looking to doing it earlier, maybe in June. But we're going to do it for 4 nights. We'll start on Wednesday, and then we'll go all the way into Sunday. We'll close it out on Sunday. So if you guys are interested, this is a free event. I'm not charging anybody. But as time gets closer, I will be putting up the dates here pretty soon. So look out for them. You can look on my Facebook page, or I do have a team page that's called New Mexico Shadow Seekers. Um, look in those areas, and I'll keep everybody posted of when we will have it out there in Dulce again as well too. So, like I said, just keep your eyes and ears open, and I will share more information here real soon
Well,
about the next camp out.
will you or Ryan come and pick me up at the airport? I'm gonna tell
Which
you,
airport is
it
depending.
it don't matter. I know that was a long ride driving out there from Tennessee, especially
Oh, I bet.
in a truck with Bear.
I bet. Oh, just like the three individuals that came from, I believe it was Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. They left like I believe a week before the camp out that we had out there. They made it out there, and they said that was a long drive
Yeah,
too. So
that
it was, but
that
they,
panhandle in Texas. Oh, that's just a long, boring drive.
yep, I bet. But it was a huge success. Everybody, like I said, everybody got to experience something, and it was really good. So, everybody wanted to, do it again. And so, there at the end, before everybody left, I made the announcement, okay, it was a huge success. We're going to do it again. So everybody's looking forward to it again. So, yeah, we're going
Well,
to do it out there in Dulce again. We had some strange lights and stuff and orbs flying around. It was pretty crazy. It was awesome, It was it was scary for a lot of the people. They
yeah,
weren't expecting some of the things that had happened. So, but they were very happy and excited to be there. They got to experience something. So that was something, that they all left with, and good memories for them. Scary memories for them, for some, but they're like, oh, we're going to come back, even though that was scary, but we're coming back again. So, and
Yeah.
some were like, I don't think I'm coming back. But, you know,
Larry,
so
we're almost 2 hours into this. Can you believe that?
Yes, but
wow.
no.
Uh, do we have any questions for
Well,
Miss Brenda before we go off the air?
we'll cover one more important question.
Okay.
How's your husband doing, Brenda?
My husband is doing much better. I just want to thank everybody for your prayers. Continue to pray for him. He's gaining strength back slowly. It's been a very rough past 4 months. Within those 4 months, we have almost lost him several times. That was really tough and scary for us. But thank you. He's doing so much better. Just keep us and keep him in prayer. Still got a long recovery, and he's doing much better now.
Good.
Thank you for asking.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Do you have any closing remarks that you would like to leave?
I just want to say thank you so much for asking me to be on the show. Like I said from the beginning, this is my first time doing a live video show. This is pretty cool. But thank you so much. And really, everybody out there, thank you for your prayers and for your support. And just thank you so much. And please be very careful out there. Be aware of your surroundings, and just take care of one another, and keep God first, and just please just be careful out in the field.
That's
I,
great advice. Larry,
mhm.
do you have any closing comments?
I'm just thankful for Brenda joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure to hear your stories. Mark's told me
Yeah.
how great a woman you are, how humble and nice, and
Thank you.
I can see that. And I just want to thank you for being on tonight. And
Thank you. You're
it,
welcome. Thank you.
for anybody that hasn't subscribed to Sawdust Beast, please subscribe. Check out my YouTube channel. Beast of the Woods, and check out Bigfoot Outlaws, Dixie Cryptid, Bigfoot Odyssey. And remember the GoFundMe for Bigfoot Odyssey, our outing that we're going to do in Florida, where the funds will go to purchase the equipment, and that equipment will be donated back to other researchers after we're through with that outing. And I think I covered everything, Mark.
Okay. Well, we just want to say if there's a topic or guest that you'd like to see on Beast TV, just put it in the comment section, and Debbie Jones is our handler, and she will get in touch with you. And we thank Debbie for all the background work that she does. We thank Shelley Reed. It's just, we always say that me and Larry's just a couple of knuckleheads, and we wouldn't be able to do this without Debbie and Shelley. And we'd be honored that if you would subscribe or hit the like button. And we want to thank our new subscribers and all of our faithful followers. And already in the comment section, I have a link to Brenda's sister, Crystal. And every Christmas, I always buy jewelry from Miss Crystal. Now they are silversmiths, and
Yes.
And it seems, Brenda, that usually I'm picking out pieces of jewelry that your mom makes. I don't know why. It's like, oh, Crystal will say, yeah, my mom made this, and but I'm going to tell you, these are, as far as I'm concerned, they're heirlooms. And
Yes.
so if you have a special gift that you would like to buy for someone, or at Christmas time, I just would like to encourage you to go and check out the link and see what's available. And they
Yes.
also do custom jewelry. And so
Yes.
we just want to remind everybody of that. And we want to thank everybody for coming on, and we will see everybody again next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
This has been a Sawdust production.